In the autumn of 1666, London was a city of 500,000 people. Packed inside walls the Romans had built 1,000 years earlier. Most of those people lived in houses made of timber and pitch with thatched roofs. The upper stories leaned across the lanes until they almost touched. This was a city that had just survived a year of plague. 100,000 people had died the summer before. The survivors believed the worst was behind them. At the eastern edge of the city, on a narrow lane called Pudding Lane, a baker named Thomas Fariner kept the king's bread oven. On the evening of September the 1st, he raked out his coals, as he did every night, and went to sleep in the room above his shop. The oven was not raked out. London should never have burned the way it did, but by September, the conditions had aligned in a way that no one in the street recognized as a warning. The summer had been one of the driest in memory. Wooden buildings, cured by months of sun, stood ready to ignite. An easterly wind had been blowing for days, strong, steady, and pushing west toward the heart of the city. Along the Thames sat warehouses packed with tar, hemp, oil, tallow, and brandy. A modern firefighter would call these materials an extreme accelerant load. In 1666, they were called commerce. The city had no fire brigade. Fires were the responsibility of the parish. Each parish kept leather buckets, axes, and long hooks used to pull down houses in the path of a blaze. To create a fire break, to deliberately demolish buildings ahead of a fire, required the order of the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor of London that year was Sir Thomas Bloodworth. He was a wealthy man, a politician, and by every account that survives, a coward. The decision that would determine the fate of London would land in his hands at 3 in the morning. At 1 in the morning, the fire began. It started in Fariner's bakery. The exact cause is still debated. Fariner, when later questioned, insisted his oven was cold. He had to. The penalty for negligence in a fire of this scale was ruin. By 2 in the morning, the flames had reached the upper floors. Fariner, his wife, and his daughter escaped across the rooftops to the neighbor's house. The maid, whose name was not preserved, refused to make the climb. She died in the building. She was the first person killed by the Great Fire. History almost never mentions her. At 3 in the morning, Sir Thomas Bloodworth was woken from his bed and brought to the scene. The fire had spread to a hay yard at the adjacent Star Inn. Neighboring houses needed to be torn down immediately to stop the flames from leaping the lane. Bloodworth looked at the fire. He told the men around him that a woman could piss it out. He refused the order to demolish. He went home. By 6 in the morning, the wind had strengthened and the fire had reached Thames Street. The warehouses caught. Tar, hemp, oil, and brandy ignited in succession. The fire was no longer something a mayor's decision could stop. By midday, 300 houses were gone. By nightfall, the heart of the medieval city of London was burning. The flames had become their own weather system, pulling air toward them with such force that men reported being knocked off their feet 100 yards from the heat. The next morning, King Charles II rode into the city himself. He took command from Bloodworth, who had vanished. The king ordered houses ahead of the fire to be blown up with gunpowder. The fire breaks Bloodworth had refused to authorize 1 day earlier. On day 3, the fire reached St. Paul's Cathedral. The lead of the roof melted and ran down the streets like a river of fire. Tombs cracked open inside the church. Books in the booksellers' vaults beneath the cathedral burned for a week after the fire was out. On day 4, the wind died. The fire died with it. When London woke on the morning of September the 6th, 80% of the walled city was gone. 13,200 houses, 87 parish churches, 44 livery halls, 6 bridges, the Royal Exchange, the Custom House, Newgate Prison, St. Paul's, 70,000 Londoners, out of a city of roughly 80,000 inside the walls, were displaced. They camped in the fields outside the city, on Moorfields and Finsbury Fields, in tents and lean-tos. Many would not have a permanent home again for years. The official death toll was 6. The real number was almost certainly higher by hundreds. The poor were not counted. Bodies cremated in the heat of the fire left no remains to count. The rebuilding began within weeks. A young architect named Christopher Wren submitted plans for a new city of wide stone boulevards. They were rejected for cost, but he was given 51 churches to design, and a new St. Paul's which still stands today. The 1667 Rebuilding Act made it illegal to build with timber in London. Houses had to be brick or stone, streets had to be wider, roofs had to be slate or tile. In 1681, a businessman named Nicholas Barban founded the first fire insurance company. He hired his own private brigade of firefighters to protect the houses his company insured. By the early 1700s, those private brigades had become the foundation of Britain's first professional fire service. The Great Fire of London is remembered as a disaster. It was also a decision. A baker who lied about his oven. A mayor who refused to act. A 4-hour window between a small fire and a citywide inferno. A window in which one man's hesitation became the disaster's true cause. Every generation since 1666 has built its codes, its brigades, and its rules on the bones of this lesson. The reason modern firefighters arrive in minutes, not hours, is that London once waited for. The fire that rebuilt London started with a chain reaction. Every disaster does. The links in the chain are decisions. Pull one out, and the chain doesn't form. That is what we are here to study.